So to introduce our panelists, Rachel Falcone and Michael Primo are with Housing as a Human Right. They're an organization based in New York. They work with organizations around the country like Picture the Homeless in New York. Here in New Orleans, they've been working with folks like Mayday NOLA, and they'll talk a little bit more about their work, but they have been doing really important work on especially housing issues. Vincent Sylvain is known probably to everybody in this room and everyone in this city as the publisher of New Orleans Agenda, the sort of definitive local voice for news on a whole wide range of issues, and he's also a housing consultant. Abdul Aziz is a brilliant photographer. His photos are on the wall. You also may have seen his work on the cover of Color Lines magazine and all around the internet, all over the place. So please welcome our panelists. So to start the discussion, we're just going to ask folks from the panel to talk for a little bit about their work, introduce themselves and their work, and talk about how the issue of community accountability fits in with their work. So just moving along this way, starting with Rachel.
Actually, I'm going to ask Michael to start.
Sure.
Give an intro to our project.
You guys want to just grab the mic off.
So how you doing? Thank you very much to PATOIS Film Festival. This is wonderful. It's a wonderful group of folks to be up here talking. My name is Michael Primo. I'm with a project called Housing as a Human Right. And Housing as a Human Right is a multi-platform documentary portrait of the struggle for home. And what we do very simply is we create a space for individuals, organizations, and communities to share personal stories of home, community, and their efforts to obtain or maintain housing. All our stories are recorded in sound and in the tradition of oral history and still photographs. And what we do with what we record is we produce a whole host of sort of media that's based in sound and still photographs. We kicked off the project with an installation in a laundromat in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, where we're from, as a way to really base the stories in the community from where they came from, where I'm from as well, and share them with the community. So in the laundromat, we had 12 first-person stories of individuals who are struggling to maintain their home or obtain a home. And they range from individuals who are homeless to individuals who are battling against forced evictions in public housing to small business owners who have been evicted to make way for luxury condos. And the question of accountability is an interesting one for me that I don't necessarily always think about, which is interesting. Because from where I come from, the reason I am interested in doing the work that I'm doing, which is ultimately focusing on exploring what home means to people, as a way for people who are in the struggle, because often it becomes so isolating when you're just sort of day after day toiling just to get by. It's so comforting to know that you're not alone. So one of the reasons we started this project was so that other people who are up in it could know what's really going on, as well as people who have no idea what's really real and what people are really dealing with. And so accountability for me was really about being accountable to my community that I felt was in a situation of dire danger and really needed folks to sort of step up and let our story be told, let our story be heard. You know, and we work a lot with Picture the Homeless, and you know, I personally have gone on actions with Picture the Homeless and taken an arrest when the time calls for it. You know, so we really function from a position to like document the struggle and document the movement and tell the stories of our friends and neighbors because it's all we have. You know.
And my name is Rachel Falcone, and I just wanted to add some thoughts to what Michael said about our project. So what we do is really try to create a space for folks to share their stories. And we do that in their homes, in community centers, in offices, and we really build with community partners to document their communities. So we understand we're documenting our own community, particularly in Brooklyn, but if we're going out to neighborhoods we don't necessarily live in, we're really reaching out and working with those community partners who are directly working in those communities. And so we'll sometimes go and we'll set up meetings at their offices and just sit with people for hours at a time, you know, and really just give them that space to share, you know, their struggle for housing, to share what home means to them, but really give that sort of open-ended time to share whatever they want and whatever they want to talk about with their lives. And so it's really in sort of oral, in the tradition of oral history. We record in sound, and if they're comfortable, we'll take photographs of them. And we really do it in sound because we believe, everyone has a story to tell, and some folks are scared, especially around housing issues. So having just that microphone allows them to be anonymous. So we do have some folks that have shared their stories anonymously. And what we really do in terms of building with our community partners is not only working directly sometimes in their offices to share the stories, but we'll also really be building with them along the way to try to figure out how the media could be utilized in organizing and advocacy. And we're still sort of developing that model, but we're working in particular with Picture the Homeless and Fury, which are New York-based organizations, Pratt Area Community Council, as well as Nesri, which is a national partner. And just in the last couple of days, we've been building with Mayday New Orleans while we're down here, and just going with them to talk to residents and meet the community in that way, and really just try to conceptualize and strategize how this media could be used directly in whatever campaigns they're working on right now. And so that's sort of a big part. And accountability, I think, is really just for me, and it's really about just a passion and a love to sit with someone. And so just looking into their eyes and seeing how they're responding to my questions or what they want to talk about is just incredibly important. And also just trying to build with the community partners what's important to them, and really trying to see if the media is useful to their work. So.
My name is Vincent Sylvan, and I guess I'm still trying to find myself, and I say that because when Jordan asked me how do I want to be identified, I really didn't know what the answer was. And I guess I'm invited here in the capacity of publisher, editor of the NewOrleansAgenda.com, but I also serve as the editor for NOLABees.org, and NOLABees.org is an internet hub of seven alternative media working together to try to be the voice of New Orleans, or provide a voice for New Orleans, our citizens, so that as we talk and live through this recovery that we're going through, that is not one that is done in silence. It's not one that the outside world does not get to see. The other explanation for why am I still trying to find myself is I never considered myself a journalist. Quite frankly, when I started doing internet marketing, it was through, and it was for the political aspect of what I do as a campaign consultant. And back in 1999, 2000, during that time frame, I just saw where the internet was going to change mainstream media, and that through the internet you had the ability to be as big as the so-called big boys. And quite frankly, I worked and tried to convince a number of those who were working in print media, in the alternative print medium, to go ahead and look into the internet. And after not being able to convince anyone to do it, I decided to just go ahead and do it myself. And that's what launched the NewOrleansAgenda.com. Since that time, we've had over 2.5 million web views. 2.5 million web views. And what we've learned is that after a time, mainstream media can no longer ignore those type of numbers. And it's quite interesting to see that we engage in stories, not just about the recovery, but our daily living and our political views often, that we start to see mainstream media start to take on those stories, and sometimes with a different spin, but oftentimes we know that it's issues that they would not address. For instance, when we brought up the fact that this was in 2006, I think it was, when we spoke very openly about this unwritten rule with the city council election, where we had for 30 years, or 25 years, where we would elect one black and one white and at large, and that was basically a secret agreement among the political leadership, the political organizational leaders, something that everyone wanted to keep quiet. But the New Orleans Agenda exposed that. And initially, most in power tried to deny that it existed. And then all of a sudden, you started to see, well, mainstream, the Times-Picayune picked it up and did a story. One of the most amazing things to me was that I'm looking at this so-called political expert. He was on one of the local television stations. He's reading directly from the piece that I wrote as if he was the expert, not one time mentioning where he was, what the source and stuff was. But I knew at that point in time that once again, it was a situation where we were going to have an opportunity to go ahead and affect how mainstream media think. Jordan with the Genesis 6 is a classic example of how you work a story and it starts to explode. It starts to build up. In fact, when I first heard the story, it was so unbelievable that I wondered, this crazy lady, Jordan, I assume was female, this is just made up. Who in the hell is she? But as I started to learn more and more and did more follow-up, in fact, it was Reverend Raymond Brown who was the first person who brought it to my attention, and that was through he recognizing your piece. We saw what happened, that it was something that was real, and eventually mainstream media became a part of that movement. When you look at what is happening in New Orleans right now, and I know we got a 5-minute opening, when you look at what's happening in New Orleans right now with the police investigation that's going on, well, it was the nation that I think that first started to give a hint of some of the stories that we had been told, some of the stories that I had written about following Hurricane Katrina, what had happened during that time frame when he wrote about what was happening in Algiers. And it started to give that whole question of whether or not NOPD may have done some things that were inappropriate. And I think had the nation not done that story, more than likely you would not see the investigation that's going on in Danziger Bridge today. So those are some examples where I think alternative type of media have a means of influencing and affecting what goes on in mainstream media.
Good evening. My name is Abdul Aziz. I am a freelance photojournalist, and I previously worked with the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana as the communications director. I was there for about 2.5 years. And one of the most important things that I learned during that time there was how important it is to shift the terms of the debate. Many times, as you've heard, many times we see how our communities are often portrayed in the media. And one of the things that is extremely important when you start to evaluate how the messaging is getting out there is, what is it that we're trying to tell our communities? What is it that we're trying to tell people about the way that they think about certain things? For instance, if you look at the way that many people are portrayed in the media, if you look at headlines specifically in New Orleans, we'll use the Danziger 7 as an example. Previously, they were being heralded as heroes post-Katrina, and there was very, very little that was really getting out about the victims of the crime that was committed against them. So one of the things is how do we shift the terms of the debate? As a freelance photojournalist, it's extremely important to be accountable to the community that you're photographing. Oftentimes, we've all seen these incredible pictures of war and incredible pictures of suffering, Haiti being the most recent example of that. We see these incredible pictures post-Katrina even here in New Orleans. But oftentimes the question comes specifically, how is it that you're accountable to the individuals that you're photographing? Are you taking these photographs simply for personal gain, or are you taking these photographs to really help change and shift the debate and highlight the problems that exist in the communities that you're photographing? Specifically as it relates to photography in conflict zones, I recently came back from a trip from Gaza, and it was one of the most devastating things that I've ever seen. Now, while I was in Gaza, and when you're in any war zone, you'll see a number of journalists working, taking their pictures from afar, not getting the depth that they need in terms of understanding who the community members are that they're focusing on. And they'll come back and they'll upload their pictures and they'll sell them to Getty Images. And at the end of the day, they don't know the name of the people that they photographed. They don't know the family members of the people that they photographed. They don't know the true story and the true essence of what it is. And I feel that photojournalism specifically is one of those really, really hard things to do when you're looking at people who are suffering firsthand and seeing that, or if you're involved in a conflict and you're watching someone suffer, a lot of people will ask, how can you take that picture? Well, that picture is important. It's important to tell the story and to really deliver and humanize the people that are there. It's a really interesting thing when we think about media and social justice and how it can really advance our cause or it can hurt our cause. While working with the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana, we saw the terms of the debate when you start to talk about young black youth specifically that are committing crimes in New Orleans being housed in conditions that are unfair. Most people want to say, oh, well, you know, they did the crime. Why are they whining about the conditions inside of the jail? If they didn't want to be there, then they shouldn't have done that. But one of the things that we did at the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana was we changed the terms of the debate. And I continue to say that. We started speaking to shared values that all of us can come together around. And slowly but surely, you start to see those headlines start to change. And I think that that's something that we really want to continue to happen. We want to continue to make that happen, is just changing the terms of the debate.
Thank you to all the panelists. So I want to turn it to the audience, see if anyone has any questions or comments on any of these questions related to media or social justice or how they interact or community accountability. Yeah.
For Aziz, you said that y'all managed to change the terms of the debate in that particular example. Can you talk about how y'all did that?
Absolutely. Well, when we first started our campaign, the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana's campaign, against the Youth Study Center, which is a juvenile pre-adjudication facility here in New Orleans, there were a number of reports of kids being housed in substandard and subhuman conditions. There was a lack of nutrition, a lack of education, and just overall kids being locked up for 23 hours a day, let out for one. And when we first filed the lawsuit against the city of New Orleans, NOLA.com blogs are always an amazing thing to watch. You would see comments like, well, these little thugs, you know, blah, 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 this, and like, I don't even want to go into some of the names that the kids were called. But what we really wanted to do was put a human face on these kids. We really wanted to make sure that the community felt that this is such an egregious crime being committed by the city of New Orleans that there's no excuse for it. We would highlight issues. We would use strong language in our description of what the problems were there. We would use direct quotes, which I think is really important when it comes down to talking about like the community, not necessarily making the voice, but a lot of it was directly from the mouths of the kid. So, you know, when you have kids saying, I wouldn't put my dog in there, they treat us like animals, we're treated like trash. These are things, and these are visuals that evoke strong emotions. And we started talking about children as children and not as criminals. So if we were to send out a media release, we wouldn't say, 14-year-old convict thinks, you know, the conditions at Youth Study Center are horrible. We would say, you know, a 14-year-old child beaten in his cell, or 14-year-old child having a minimal amount of food to eat per day. So I think that when you speak in shared values and you speak in a way and you create headlines in a way that humanize people and speak to shared values of individuals, it really starts to change things. And slowly but surely, you know, we would meet with the editorial board of the Times-Picayune. We would meet with different editorial boards around the city. And, you know, those types of things really help. Sitting down and really explaining the stance that you're taking for social change. And surely there were a number of articles that started coming out from the editorial board, directly from the editorial board of the Times-Picayune, that carried our headlines and our messaging. And I think that that's really powerful. Anything else?
Anyone, any other questions? Yes.
First of all, I would like to speak on, I would like to direct this, I can't know this question.
Abdulaziz. Yes.
Say it again.
Abdul Aziz.
Abdullah.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to address a question to Mr. Vincent Sullivan. One thing I've learned dealing with the youth today, I look at the educational system. They don't show enough concern and interest in what's going on with the children at school. At school, I mean, say before the storm, prior to Katrina, some of the schools, they have more interest in children. Say, for instance, if you miss a day from school, someone would call you home and notify your parents why you didn't attend school today. Sometimes it's not always the kids. It's something that's going on in the home. And they should have counselors there to contact these parents and bring the parents, make the parents get involved, hold the parents accountable for what these kids are going through in school, and we don't have enough of that. And this is what I see that's most needed, because now, I mean, I see some children don't go to school for weeks at a time, and nobody, do anything, But it's the parents saying this lady might have to go to work at nighttime when her children come home, and they have to leave her children, say, neighbor, would you keep an eye on them? They'll call OCS. But she's doing her job as a parent. I think that we should look into the education system and let them do their job. Let the people that work, the social workers, whoever's involved, the principal, look at what's going on with the kids. Not just, every day children with a behavior problem. Something is wrong there. That's not a normal thing. Show them some love. Show them that somebody cares. Like they had after-school programs for children. That was the only place some children could go after school to get a kind word, an afternoon snack, and someone to help them with help them with their homework. This is one of the things I think you should look at for the education system is concerned. Mr. Sullivan, it brings me back to, I think, Miss Colleen Brown. Do you remember? She was a...
Most certainly do.
Okay, this is what I would like to find out. At that time, I don't know if you were managing these apartments or whatever, but she was going to be evicted, her and her 3 children. And as of today, well, we came to your house, myself and some more people, with her to see what we could do. For them, all they had to do was the proper paperwork for this young lady to be able to keep from being evicted. And as of today, this has been over a year ago, this paperwork haven't been done yet. And I would like to know, what is the problem? What is the process?
I wish you could find that answer for me, because Ms. Brown has been residing. She was not going to get evicted. Ms. Brown has been residing in our facility since after Hurricane Katrina, and we have not received 1 copper penny.
She was under some voucher program, okay?
I understand that fully. I have been lied to over and over and over and over again, not by Ms. Brown, but by the housing agency, that they are going to, and I know they can't do it because, first of all, she's residing without having had, having that unit being certified. So there's no way that housing can do a back payment without some type of certification that's been done.
Okay.
So that's why when they tell me that they're going to pay it, I know they're lying.
Okay, this is what I want to know. When we talked to you at your home that day, you assured us that you was going to...
I assured you that I was going to do the follow-up, and I did that follow-up, and once again, housing still have not honored that commitment. What I also asked you all to do was to help me to try to get it, because we want to get paid. We want to get paid.
And we want her to be
this is almost 5 years now.
So what's the problem? Something is wrong somewhere. And I mean, this lady is living in a home with her 3 kids. Nobody have the answers. All they said is the paperwork. This is what you told me, that you was going to do the necessary paperwork.
The paperwork is not on me. The paperwork is on housing.
Well, I thought,
If most property owners would have put her out.
Say that again, sir?
Most property owners would have put her out.
Well, I'm gonna tell you like this, Mr. Sullivan. With her and her 3 children, they would have had a fight on their hands.
But
Putting
still,
her out because
most property
we
owners.
wasn't gonna allow that because for number
But
one,
you didn't have to allow it because we weren't going to do that.
this is what I'm saying. How could they let this lady and her kids have this over her head all this time?
Ms.
Don't
Sharon,
know when
I
she's gonna
I
be
hope you can
evicted.
find the answer to that.
Well, I thought you had the answer because this was the understanding that I had.
I wish,
you know-
and I still wish you can find the answer to that because we would love to get paid. You know, she's been in a unit for 5 years and we haven't received a penny and will not receive a penny for that. We understand that. And the only reason why she hadn't been evicted is because of the people who own that building. They have compassion and I have compassion.
Well, I'm very glad that you have the compassionate, and I want you to know that, you know, since nothing has been done, this is something that we're gonna pursue.
I hope you all would
Continue
put
to
it on
pursue.
your top agenda.
It's already on my
and go
top
down
agenda.
there
It's
and
just
march
love.
and protest and do
Look,
whatever you
we
can.
let me tell you something.
Once again, we would like to get paid
You
because
see,
we pay in
like-
the bank every month on a note.
I want to say this here. We're going to expose the people for what they are not doing to help the people, and this is going to get done. This is one thing. You might not see us, but we are doing our job, and we're going to see that.
And I would
taken
venture
care
to
of.
guess that she's not the
Thank
only
you.
one in that
Thank you.
situation.
Okay, do we have other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Vincent, you've worked in politics and government, and now
Yes.
you're a journalist. Do you ever think about going back to work in politics and government? Does that affect what you do as far as a journalist?
I've been trying to run away and get away from top politics. I did manage Mitch Landrill's election day operation. I am serving on his housing task force, actually chairing the structure and reorganization committee of that task force. Something keeps bringing me back to housing. No matter how much I try to do something different, I was sharing with Jordan earlier, my passion is jazz. I'm a jazz musician, and that's what I really, really love. The media thing, like I mentioned earlier, was because no one else would do it. And once again, I just keep getting assignments, being placed in control of media-related type activities. Never say never, but my intent is not to go back into housing. I would prefer being able to work from the outside, continue to provide advice and consent and direction for those who are in power. You know, my education is also in urban planning, so I think some of that is what keeps pulling me. Or maybe I'm a firm believer in God. Maybe it's God that's just saying, okay, no matter how hard you try, you know, your body is my temple, and I decide what you're going to do. And I just keep getting pulled that direction, no matter how hard I fight.
Before we go to the audience, I just want to, on this theme of housing, I just want to take my privilege as a moderator, ask Rachel and Michael, what do you think the corporate media is getting wrong on housing? Why is your work important, specifically in this realm of housing?
It's interesting you say that because we spend a lot of time looking at the dominant narrative, trying to watch everything that we see on CNN and all the stations. And the motivation behind what we do and is not present in the mainstream media is individual stories and the voices of individuals. The mainstream, the dominant media is condensed to sound bites and stereotypes, which just take images and just talk about statistics, right? And a perfect example of said statistics in New York and federally, the HUD has one definition of what it means to be homeless, and it often does not take into account families that are displaced or evicted and are doubling up with other families or sleeping in motels and are in various other states of sort of flux. So what we try to do through our work is really create a space for individuals to speak for themselves, because that's sort of what that's what doesn't exist in the dominant media. And I think that in a lot of ways, the dominant media is not interested in. In a lot of ways, the power structure does not want individuals to speak for themselves. So really why we started this project was so that we could create this ongoing series of 3 to 5 minute audio-based stories of individuals telling you their story. Because ultimately, I think there are certain things that every individual, regardless of race and class, has a desire for. And that desire is a place to live, a sense of stability and a sense of security. You know, and those things combined are what intellectually is known as human rights. But human rights are an intellectual abstraction, which only when those fundamental human rights are deprived or neglected or like violently removed from our realm of understanding do we begin to understand that. But for people who haven't or are blessed to have not been in that situation, human rights remain an intellectual abstraction. So, and that is completely absent from the dominant narrative that you see in the news. Like all you hear coming out of our communities is about violence. You know, that's all you hear. You know, who shot who and what, you know? So what motivated us to start this project is to create a space for every individual who wants to say something. And then working through a variety of media. You know, it's interesting what these gentlemen do because technology has become a great equalizer. It's really created a democratic environment for which to sort of document and distribute that documentation, whether it's through work of NGOs who create very specific messaging to counter dominant narratives, or whether it's creating those platforms with which to distribute it. You know, and the work that we're doing, you know, combines both of those aspects so we can begin to insert our own story, our own narrative in the sort of as a counter to the dominant narrative.
I just want to add that I think something Michael and I try to do is really connect these diverse narratives. So a lot of, you know, what we see on, you know, perhaps CNN or something is about this housing bubble and people that are just in this current economic crisis with the housing situation. And what we try to do is really connect people that have been, you know, struggling for generations with displacement and, you know, issues of housing, connect someone that's in public housing to someone that's going through foreclosure currently. And so that's something that we really try to do in our work.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may, just I think the mainstream media and the power structure does not want different communities to interact because they recognize the strength and the power in numbers. So like, you know, issues of folks who are in public housing are deliberately separated from issues of people who are, you know, homeowners, you know? But like the governor and the mayor and the president, they live in public housing. Our money subsidizes them. So what's the difference, right? And so what we're really trying to do is bring all those stories together so that when you experience the stories that we create, folks can begin to understand systemic challenges. Because we live in a culture that privileges profit over people. And if we can begin to unite all these different stories that have been systematically separated by design, then we can begin to come together and gain a collective momentum and collective power through our stories.
I saw a couple other hands back here.
I can speak louder now. I was wondering where can we get some of the sound bites from individuals? Where can you hear and witness your work?
It's funny you ask. I have. You want to work for me? I have CDs tonight that are $10. On these CD are 11 first-person stories of individuals from across the spectrum who are struggling to maintain or obtain housing. Also on this CD is what we call remix testimony. We work with DJ Oja of the Earth Driver Live Arts Collective to create these mashups. If you know, y'all are familiar with West Indian music, mashups like the sense of bringing all these different sort of sound bites and anecdotes together to create these sort of soundscapes of testimonies and feeling. And so I got those CDs here today. If you have access to the internet, our website is housingisahumanright.org, and we have multimedia slideshows, which are a combination of photos and audio available on our website, you know?
Other questions? Yeah.
I'm curious about this idea of careful listening and being present that you guys
think just for me, it's empowering for people to hear their own stories. And so, for example, there was a woman, you know, that this elderly couple, and it was one of the craziest houses that we ever went into. This couple, it was the day of their eviction, and they were telling us sort of about this. I mean, they had been forced into this basement apartment, and it was just terribly, you know, just incredible conditions. And you know, I was really nervous when she was going to hear her story, because we edit the stories and sort of really try to, it's all first person, we're not in it, we're not, you know, we don't narrate the stories. And I was nervous about, you know, what she would think about it. And when she came, we had it at, in a space that was sharing lots of folks. And they put on the headphones, and, you know, she started like smiling and laughing, and, you know, she took off the headphones and she said, "I'm a rock star." You know, and sort of that was really important for me to just feel like, you know, even a really sad story could be really, you know, empowering for someone to know that someone else would hear it. I think it is really challenging in terms of how we edit the stories to figure out, I mean, we really try to talk with our community partners about what would be a useful narrative, and the people that are telling the story, and really just try to spend as much time with people, but it's really a challenge as, you know, as creators of media of what you're telling. And sort of the narrative that you have to condense it to, right? If you spend 3 hours with someone and you're trying to bring it into a story of about 5 minutes, it's a challenge.
Abdulaziz, did you want to answer that too?
Yeah. Photography is one of those things that's really, really hard to kind of, if you're working as a freelance photojournalist, and you're definitely dealing with larger distribution houses such as Getty Images or Demotics or whoever it is that wants to buy your images, it's really difficult to keep a handle on what message goes with those. For instance, this past trip I had an opportunity, first I'll speak to this as being present. During my trip to Gaza, I had an opportunity to meet the Izzedine al-Qassam Brigade, which is the armed military wing of Hamas. And the first night, I was asked not to bring my camera. I was just kind of whisked away by the Mujahideen, and not knowing where I was going. And during that first night, I sat down with them, I talked to them, I learned about their struggle, I learned about what it is that they're doing in an objective way. And it was really just fascinating to see and hear the story as it's told from that side and that perspective. It's not something that happens often. It's not something that a lot of people get to do firsthand and experience firsthand. The second night, they came back and got me again, and that was the opportunity that I had to photograph them. I don't feel like that, if I wasn't able to sit down and listen and not interject my opinion, I didn't feel as if those pictures that are on the wall at the end here would be possible. Now, as it regards to a lot of the photos on the wall that have to do with Gaza, if I sell that image to a house that may potentially sell it to CNN or may potentially sell it to whoever it is, I have to understand that my message and my personal political beliefs go away at that moment, because I don't have the ability to follow the picture infinitely and necessarily interject what it is. And I think that's one of the things that I find unbelievably powerful about your work, is that the voice stays, there's no cutting it up. I mean, you may be able to cut it up, but no matter what, I think that audio oral traditions are an amazing accompaniment. Now, in my own personal work, as I documented many of these things, I also recorded audio and have posted them so people can tell their stories along with the photos. But I think it's really important to understand that if a person specifically working in photojournalism is worried about their story being perceived in a negative connotation in the way that it wasn't meant to be, then that's really where the moral decision comes to whether the money is more important or preserving your ideologies and the stories of those individuals. So oftentimes, if something can be taken the wrong way, or in a context that I know if I see it on CNN's webpage and a picture of someone standing in their house in Gaza that's destroyed, and the caption says, "Militant Hamas won't back down, blah, 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 I know that that would hurt me, so I wouldn't put my work out in that way. And I would rather exhibit it in ways that, where I can tell the story and I can explain, or the audio can tell the story and people can explain for themselves what it is that they're experiencing. If that makes sense. Yes.
What's your feeling about using video where you would have the opportunity to craft a piece that is your vision or the vision?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Mark. Can you speak up?
Yes, I know you do mostly photojournalism, but based on what you just said, the logical question comes up. What's your thought about switching, or at least incorporating video, where you have a chance to craft a piece according to your vision and according to the vision of the people who've allowed you to enter their lives and tell their story?
Absolutely. I think that that's something, well, my background is actually in documentary filmmaking. Like originally, for the past 10 years, I've been a documentary filmmaker. And it's really only been recently that still photography has captured me in a way that has really just kind of spellbinded me and made me feel like that's really the only outlet that I'm interested in working with right now. But, you know, with the technologies that are coming out, specifically with new digital SLR cameras, they have the ability to record video as well. And that's, you know, in my upcoming work across the world, hopefully, that's something that I can also do. Yep.
We're getting towards the end of this program, but I want to, I think it's important if we're talking about media in New Orleans, you know, to talk about this case that you mentioned, Mr. Sylvain, that's really dominating our headlines about police and police corruption, police accountability, and about especially Danziger Bridge. And I wonder if you or Aziz, as the New Orleanians on the panel, want to talk any about how the media has done on this story.
I really don't want to dominate the microphone. I'm not a person who likes to talk at all. However, if we look at the Danziger 7, I think this is a perfect example of understanding how important messaging is and how quickly things can shift and how public opinion can instantly shift just because of a headline or just because of a media story that's been run. Initially, when the Danziger 7 case was broken, there was so much negative media directed at the victims of the crime. There were even staff on Times-Picayune wrote some just atrocious articles as it related to the death of Mr. Madison. It's something that's really fascinating now to see that when the truth comes out, and I'm only using this as an example, it took a federal investigation for people to start thinking about this different. But even if this federal investigation had gone on and there was no media coverage of it, or the outcome, there was no media coverage of the outcome, people would still be thinking in the opposite way. So when we look at news media outlets like Fox News, who I despise, when we look at media outlets such as CNN, or our mainstream media outlets, even here in the city, our opinion-leading newspaper, Times-Picayune, they have so much power. There is so much power behind the words that people read. There is so much power behind that 25-second clip and soundbite that you hear in the news. It shifts the way that we think about everything. And I don't think people really understand how much a 25-second soundbite has. But anyway, the Danziger 7, I think it's really an interesting case study in terms of media right now. And hopefully there will be more of a community-led and community-driven media effort to make sure that the story doesn't die down, because we're excited about things. We have an attention span of like maximum a week when it comes to headlines. But I think that it's really important for the community to continue to drive this issue and continue to drive the issue around police brutality post-Katrina. Overall, we need more stories. And you know, with the advent of YouTube, with iReport, with these things, people have the ability to push this stuff out now in a way that is unprecedented. We're no longer subject to our opinion-leading news outlets. We can change the terms of the debate ourselves with our computers, with our digital cameras, with our video cameras, with our flip cameras, no matter what the quality is. We're living in an information age where people are hungry for it and they want the true story. I say take this opportunity that reality television has provided us, although I hate it, take the opportunity that reality television has provided us to present real-life issues to the community, to the world, so they can understand what's really going on.
You want me to grade the mainstream media on the coverage of Danziger 7? I guess it's incomplete. It's incomplete. I don't think that if you didn't, like I mentioned earlier, if you didn't have stories out there, such as the stories you write, and stories such as A.C. Thompson did, that mainstream media would ever have looked for the truth. You know, what is interesting is, and I got a chance to meet with someone who at least claimed that they were a family member and was on the bridge during that time. And while the story this person gave me seems plausible, seems real, just didn't have the resources to do the necessary verification to make sure that it was a real story. Because just like we get real stories, we also get those that aren't real. And I've put one or two of those out in the past, and those are one of the brutal lessons that you learn, and you learn those early on to make certain that you're able to go ahead and document. But mainstream media has the resources that's necessary to do such type documentation, and I think the story that you got from mainstream media following Katrina, not just with Danziger 7, but with some of these other stories, is the one that the media wanted to have portrayed. And if it wasn't for alternative type media, keep staying in that face, I don't think they ever would have moved. I think the earlier question was about video a little bit earlier. One of the things that we have recognized at nolabees.org, and I didn't mention earlier, we have 7 partners, but we have 2 Hispanic, Latino American, Jambalaya News, El Tiempo. We have an Asian American partner, and the rest are African American, predominantly news medium. What we are now able to do is introduce our publications to other audience and vice versa. And I think as we work in a collaborative fashion, what you're going to start to see that we now become even bigger than we were individually. And what we have started doing is doing video documentary. The old adage that says that a picture tells 1,000 words, well, a video image, a video story probably tells 1,000,000 words, and we have seen the need to go ahead and do that. And most of our partners are going through training right now in terms of how to best utilize video documentary.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left on this panel, so I just want to give any of the panelists, if any of y'all want to say any last words or final words on this, give y'all this opportunity now.
No, I just want to put a shameless plug, you know. Check out housingisahumanright.org. If y'all don't have access to the internet, we got cards, we got an 800 number that's toll free anywhere in the country. You can holler at us anytime, 24 hours a day, you know what I mean, to share your ideas of what home means to you. And we want to hear from absolutely everyone, you know what I mean? So I have flyers and postcards I'll give to y'all. Feel free to holler at us, you know. We're really looking to build with absolutely everyone, because housing is a fundamental human right, you know, and it's, you know, it's our space to tell our story.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to go ahead and address this audience. I don't know, does that make me an official member of the film festival? I used to call environmentalists environmental wackos, and then I started dating an environmentalist, and then and that kind of started to change me a little bit. And then I started working for an environmental justice entity, and I said this in front of about 1,000 people when they gave me this award. I received an award for my work in environmental affairs. And it was only then that I realized, hey, wait a minute, I must be an environmentalist now, so I guess maybe I have a new hat to wear.
Just always appreciative of this amazing festival. That's it.
Please give it up for Rachel Falcone, Michael Primo, Vincent Sylvain, and Abdul Aziz.